Inking Doris Sloane. All right, we're back on the Doris Sloane page, and I'm not even sure what page this'll be when everything is put together. But this is a sequence from the Yellow Man, and I did another video when I was penciling part of this, so I'm going into the inks now. I've finished the penciling, and this is sort of a hotel bedroom scene where Chick Talbot and Doris Sloane are having a rendezvous. They're having an affair, and we're getting a little bit of the backstory about the studio that Chick works at and that Doris is the owner of, and a little bit about this cartoonist Irwin Roth, who is kind of the Citizen Kane of the story. And the title lettering on this sequence is, inspired by action strips like those of Milt Caniff, Steve Canyon, and Terry and the Pirates, those types of things. And in a way, this project is kind of an homage to all the comics that I love. And so each of the chapters is kind of like a sequence with its own title lettering. I'm using the zebra nib here. I switched between that and the Hunt 102. I was having trouble with this page. The Bristol board the ink was bleeding into the paper. I've been having a lot of trouble with that recently, and I don't know if it's because I'd let the Bristol board sit for so long. I bought it, these pads, and then I hadn't used them for a long time, and whether I don't know if they're degrading or what's going on. Okay, jumping ahead here, got half the page inked now, and going to finish up this page, or most of it at least, and back using the zebra nib. So the conversation that Doris Sloane and Chick are having is about this Irwin Roth who worked at the studio that Doris is now the owner of and Chick works at as an artist. And he, that is, Irwin Roth, was a famous writer, famous for having developed one of the studio's biggest titles, biggest books, along with the founder of the studio, Jack Sloane. So these two figures, Jack Sloane and Irwin Roth, and their relationship and their finding fame with this book that they developed between the two of them called The Magus, and which still remains one of the hot titles that the studio produces. So kind of like a Superman or a Batman, one of those titles that is stuck around for decades, and is constantly being redone and reimagined by each generation of cartoonists. And these are the two that developed it. So they're kind of like they have kind of like a Bob Kane, Bill Finger relationship, where Jack Sloane is obviously the Bob Kane analog, and I did model him a great deal after Bob Kane. And Irwin Roth is sort of takes the place of Bill Finger, although his story in The Yellow Man is a little bit different. but they have the same kind of relationship where they have a falling out, and so in our story, they have a very contentious relationship, and it ends with both of them kind of disappearing around the same time, giving rise to all sorts of gossip and rumors about what had happened to them. And while Jack Sloane never resurfaces, and the studio is then taken over and run by his wife Doris, Irwin Roth does reappear a year later, and he's found walking out of the desert somewhere in the Southwest, having no memory of what had happened to him the previous year or so that he'd been gone. And so there's this whole mystery of, what happened to them, if they were connected, if it was connected, their two disappearances. And here in the scene, Chick is trying to get some information from Doris, what she thinks about it all, and she's basically saying that she's of the opinion that he just ran away with one of his girlfriends, and that she's just glad that he didn't take all the money with him. And we learned that it was her money that financed the studio all those years, that he never really had a cent to his name. He was a bit of a scoundrel. And her attitude is pretty much good riddance. And then Chick asks her about Irwin Roth and about the rumors that, that he possibly had something to do with Jack Sloane's disappearance, or maybe even his death. And she says, oh, he wouldn't hurt a fly. He was a real pussycat. And she cautions Chick about listening to the gossip of a bunch of pencilers and writers. Sort of expressing her low opinion in the pecking order of the studio. And Chick is he doesn't really begin in this book. He doesn't really, it's not his fascination with Irwin Roth to begin with. He's sort of getting caught up in it through his co-worker Lorelei, who's the one primarily obsessed with Irwin Roth and wanting to find out more. And as the story goes on, Chick becomes a little bit more interested in it and gets caught up in it in his own way. Although he's got his own little story arc, which maybe we'll get to eventually when I draw that bit. So here's a panel. So this is a flashback as they're talking about Jack Sloane and Irwin Roth. So we get to see them. There's Jack Sloane, and he's got this sort of kind of wavy hair. His look is kind of modeled after my grandfather. He had that kind of hair, and it's the time period is obviously set in maybe the 60s, and people were still wearing white shirts and ties, regardless of what their job is. I remember seeing pictures of my great uncles, and they'd be hanging out after having been at a day's work, and they're still in their white shirts and Their dress pants. This is how everybody dressed at that time. And as I said, he's Jack Sloane is influenced a great deal by Bob Kane, his character, even a little bit of his look as well, I guess. The story, everybody's a smoker. So as I was doing this, when I originally started drawing this, it wasn't such a big deal, but now showing people smoking is kind of thought of differently now, especially when, if your books are being read by children. So, although this isn't meant for, the story isn't meant for children, it's meant for an adult reader. I've never been a smoker myself, but it seems like everybody in this era had a cigarette. And it seemed especially appropriate. Chick seems like the person who would be a chain smoker. So, it's fun to draw him that way. I'm glad I don't have to smell all the smoke. So there's Irwin Roth arguing with Jack Sloane. So this is supposed to be a panel showing one of their loud arguments, which happens a lot. And in the background there we see a couple of the other cartoonists looking on, just trying to give the cartoonist sort of a kind of a nerdy look, I guess. Everybody's got their white short sleeve button down shirt and their tie. These characters were fun to draw. So the Irwin Roth Jack Sloane storyline intersects with those of the main characters. These two are no longer really in the picture. We just see them in flashback. They're figures of the past. And we get little glimpses of them in flashback or in the stories that we hear other people tell of them. But their story intersects with all the other main characters, Chick and Lorelei and a few others that we haven't seen yet. And I think this is getting towards the end of this video. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please consider being a patron of our Patreon site, patreon.com/Sean and Kiera. You get to see these videos ahead of time, and you get PDFs, access to PDFs of all the artwork you're seeing produced here when I get them done, and I put them up and I color them and all of that. So please consider supporting us. All right. Thank you, and until next time. Bye-bye.